Thanks so much, Heather. Thanks for your double duty service today. And thanks to anybody else who's doing service in the meeting. And all of us just by showing up to witness each other's recovery. I'm Boaz, a grateful fellow traveler. I set my timer for 30 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to speak for 30 minutes, but I wanted to at least have an idea of what was happening. And I'm a little dysregulated. I'm going to hope in the first few minutes of talking that I'll be able to be more present. I hope to mostly speak about my ACA recovery today. I spoke, had the privilege of speaking on Voices Across America 2 weeks ago, and went way into my upbringing and my behaviors before ACA. And I might lightly touch on that today, but not go into so much detail as I did on that recording. And thank you for asking for me to be the speaker today. I feel so new in ACA, and it's almost 3 years. On April 15th, I will have my 3rd birthday. And oh my gosh, it's been quite almost 3 years. I'm speaking to you from North Central Florida in the USA. That was the home of the Timucua and the Seminoles before colonization, before the white people slaughtered them and took over. It's a real privilege to live in. I live in a wilderness area. It's incredibly, exquisitely beautiful. I spent a lot of time in nature and a lot of time in self-care, finally giving myself permission to take care of myself. Up until almost 3 years ago, I had a life of caretaking everybody except for me. I came into the program to save a relationship, and it was the 14th long-term relationship that I've been in. I'm 64 now. I was 61 when I came into the program. I've been queer, non-binary person my entire life. And I was born in 1960. I was born into a family that are descendants of immigrants. They farmed in East Side, New York City. And when I was very little, my parents moved us to South Florida, where I knew nobody, and there were very few Jews at the time. I was raised in a strict Jewish home. So we went from kind of immersion in family and culture to a very kind of wasteland of white Christian people. And it was very important to assimilate. And I was encouraged from the very beginning to have a false self to face the world for safety's sake. My parents are children of the Holocaust and the World War II Holocaust. There's been lots of Holocausts, and there are still Holocausts going on. But that particular one was really fresh for my parents, and they told me very young to hide certain aspects of myself. It was kind of hard to hide. I was slightly darker in color than the other kids, and also had black curly hair. And so I was right away targeted for a lot of bullying. And my childhood was filled with a lot of fear. My parents had no parenting skills and no connection skills. They did their best, but their best, of course, was torturous to my brother and I, who did not negotiate the proper developmental stages that children should negotiate. we were very understimulated, we weren't connected with, and were mostly expected to be kind of ornamental for the parents. And my mom was very feminine, very diva-like person, and she really wanted me to be a traditional daughter, and she was able to control me for the first few years of my life. But then once I started to have my own, a little bit of agency, maybe after the age of 2 or 3, we were at odds a lot because I was much more male than female. And it wasn't acceptable then. It's a bit more acceptable now. I'm really happy to be able to finally use they, them pronouns. But I have pretty much passed as male my entire life. They put me through conversion therapy when I came out to them, and eventually I was able to convince them that it was killing me, and they accepted what was then considered my being gay. And things did not get necessarily peaceful in my home, but at least I was not under constant terror by my parents and the people they were hiring to change me to be straight. So I'm gonna full speed through pretty much what I did. My false self consisted of becoming a guy, and not in the sense that not in terms of transitioning like is more possible today, but in terms of dressing, passing, and behaving as a boy starting in high school. And so that really worked. I went from being the most uncool, bullied, ugly girl to being a pretty handsome young man. And it became apparent to me that people thought that was kind of cool. And it was, in the early 70s. So gay life was just becoming something that people knew about. I was in South Florida, so the Anita Bryant, anybody who has researched or is old enough to remember the Anita Bryant thing where she went to war with homosexuals. And I was an activist, a very young activist during that time, and have been an activist for all kind of causes. And that was actually part of my false self. It was not that I don't believe in all the causes, but it was just my way of connecting. It was my inner drugstore. Instead of pursuing a life where I would say to myself, what are my interests? What are my passions? What might I like to do with my life? There's millions of choices in this life, this precious life. What would I like to do with my very short span here? Because in the scheme of things, I feel like I've just been here for the blink of an eye. And all of a sudden, I was 61 and coming into ACA and realizing, what have I been doing for 61 years? Who have I been doing? Who have I been? These are not my thoughts. This is not my actual life. I haven't made any choices. I've lived in reaction to fear and running from pain, mainly fear of my own emotions. I've run from my own emotions my entire life. And I ran from them in a lot of ways of self-expression, of becoming a car mechanic, being sort of the knight in shining armor, and every aspect of me was an expression of trying to find my worthiness. Was I interested in cars? Yes, I am mechanically inclined. I was interested in cars, but the thing is, I was mainly doing it to have the image of a strong, kind of cocky, swaggering person with a tool belt on, and eventually morphed into a biker, having motorcycles, and my behaviors toward women especially. I did a lot of sexual acting out. I left a trail of a lot of behaviors that I'm not proud of. And my sexuality became sort of the main like arbiter of my self-esteem. However I was gratifying myself and assuming I was gratifying others, that was the source of my self-esteem. And what I really wanted was a family. And I tried over and over again. Like I said, I've had 14 life partners, 14 women who I intended to spend the rest of my life with. And what that means also is 14 catastrophic breakups. So my nervous system has really taken a hit over the years because I'm an adult child and I have that abandonment stuff. I'm going to talk about some resources throughout my share, and one of them is a speaker named Annie S., and she's been a real lifeline for me. You can find her talks at acalunchtime.com out of Sydney. Annie S. has 3 talks on there, and I've learned many things. She's like given me vocabulary for so many things. And one of the things she talks about is that she actually addresses the rainbow community, she calls us, don't get to properly negotiate adolescence because most of the time we're in hiding. And that was the truth for me. I spent, until I came out at about 15 or 16 years old, I was in hiding. I knew from the age of 5 that there was something really not acceptable about me. And my adolescence was spent in hiding. And a thing Annie S. says, and she's a childhood developmental like doctor of childhood development, amazingly with an ACA filter, because she's an adult child herself. She talks about that those of us who don't negotiate adolescence properly, like sort of remain in adolescence, because adolescence is where we get to try things out. And I mean, I'm not saying it as well as she does, but that basically people who don't negotiate adolescence play house. And I played house with 14 different women for a variety of number of years. My relationships were anywhere from 1 year to my longest was 7.5 years. Playing house, trying to put together who I am, trying to taste life, taste creating a family, but not having the skills. And of course, only picking other people who didn't have those skills. So when I think about who I was and who I was picking to do this with, of course it wasn't going to work. I'm only now being able to grasp what it actually takes to have a truly intimate relationship, which I haven't had yet, even though I've had 14 partners and countless encounters. I don't know that I've shared my first moment of intimacy with a romantic partner. The intimacy that I share these days is like right now, being myself, not curating what I'm saying, not editing, not managing an image, just being my true self, which I'm not even that great at yet. It's still pretty unfamiliar, but I learned how to do that here in ACA. And so I pretty much formed that false self that it, to all appearances, was pretty cool. I was a DJ in the gay club at night. I was a mechanic during the day. I've worked in cinemas as a projectionist, and in the coolest like art cinemas. And I mean, I've had a life that if you looked at a video of my life, you might be, well, there's a really creative, revolutionary, really not cookie cutter person. But the truth is that was all just sort of like, I was like impersonating what I thought a cool person might do and look like, and what jobs they might have and what women they might have. And there was no connection with my actual true self. And of course, this is going to have a shelf life. I don't know how I lasted as long as I did, with all the dangerous things I did, all the people I hurt, all the people who really wanted to hurt me for the things I did to them or their relationships. I destroyed people's relationships. I was inappropriate in a lot of ways. I went through the world uncaring, one might say, a narcissist. Even there were people who thought I was a sort of a sociopath because I seemed to not care, but inside I cared a whole lot, but I didn't know how to do anything different. And in 1995, I hit a bottom, went to SLAA. They advised me to go to AA because nobody in my SLAA group here had any recovery. They said, we go to AA for our recovery. So I started it. I took a white chip in SLAA and AA in 1995, and then just took that same persona into the rooms. And as you might imagine, that worked great. There's plenty of room for tough biker whatevers in the rooms of AA, NA, and SLAA. My major destructive habits really slowed down, but instead I went into more like serial monogamy in the rooms. And that went on. That's pretty much the picture. I created a picture. I created a picture in the rooms. I got with other women in the rooms. We were the power couple. We were the ones everybody wished they wished they were us, you know, or at least that's what I imagined. My family really taught that the outer picture matters the most, and I really took that to heart. And so my ability to speak out of the recovery material and be desirable as a sponsor and as a speaker and have the most beautiful woman on my arm, and on it went like that for decades until it finally blew up almost 3 years ago when I found ACA. So now I'm going to shift over to my ACA life. I was almost 3 years ago, I was in a relationship. I was in what I thought was the relationship that was the harvest of all my hard work in recovery, my hard work on myself, because I've certainly worked on myself in all kinds of ways, all the ways we all do for years and years, trying to get better. The harvest had happened, and I was 4 years in to a relationship. We were both very prominent in our recovery group. And I was so dead inside and had no idea what was wrong with me. And so I was doing as advised by my recovery group and my sponsor. I was doing the steps again. I was part of a big book organization, you know, that espoused these really intensive 4 steps. And it was COVID time, and I found this hardcore sponsor on Zoom, and I did my steps again. And I drove to Washington, D.C. to read her, where it would take 3 days to read her my 4th step. So do step 5 in Washington, D.C. And while I was gone, my partner sponsor flew in from Boston to hear her 5th step. So we were, you know, just this perfect, perfect picture recovery couple. And then we were going to come home and do the rest of our steps together, and, you know, eventually get married and all that stuff. So I read my 5th step to my sponsor. And when it was time to do 6 and 7, I went to the National Cathedral and got in a pew and got on my knees. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I felt nothing doing the steps again. I felt nothing doing this 5th step. I am so dead inside. And I actually don't know that necessarily that I believe in God or that there is a God, but I knew that I needed to beg whatever forces existed. And that was a really nice place to do it in that cathedral. And pretty much I begged, help me, because I don't know where to go from here. I've done all the step work I can possibly do. I've done all the rigor I can possibly do, and I am so dead, and I have no idea what's wrong. No idea. And I knew that that force would help me, because that is a force, whatever that is, helped me survive to that day. I knew it would help me, but I couldn't imagine how, because I had already done, it doesn't get higher than doing the steps again, does it? It's like, there was just not, I thought I was on the last house on the block. So I drove home to Florida. And when I arrived home, my partner that night greeted me with the announcement that her step work had helped her to see that she needed to come clean, that she had never, no, not never, that she did not want to be in our relationship anymore, that she was done. And in fact, she had been already done 2 years ago, but couldn't tell me, because being an adult child, she has that thing where we hold on to a relationship no matter what. And I've done that. I've done that to people as well. I have stayed with someone, living with, partnered with someone years after I knew it was really time to go. So this is some karma also that I got to review. Pretending to be with someone when I really had left the building a long time ago. And she admitted to me that she had left a long time ago and wasn't interested in being in our relationship anymore. But for various reasons, it was not a good time for her to move or anything like that. So she needed for us to just live together till we could make a change. And she had waited so long that she literally like couldn't stand me anymore. So I went, when I left for Washington, D.C., I had a partner who I thought lit up when I walked in a room. 4 years in, still in love, still all of it. I came home to a person who couldn't stand me and hadn't been able to stand me, in fact, for 2 years. And so she wasn't being nice to me anymore. She was ignoring me and also had no patience for me whatsoever. And so I started to feel a lot of abuse, trauma responses, PTSD, just from the whole sudden shift. And also I was in trauma responses all the time for the ways she was being toward me. And someone in one of my rooms, my recovery rooms, mentioned ACA. It's something I'd never been open to before, but for some reason on that day, I took down this person's number. And this was a while in to living in this untenable living situation, where I went into full blown trying to save the relationship. And I took down the number thinking I'll join ACA and recover so that this person will love me again. And I came into the rooms of ACA, and I remember being so disappointed at the end of the solution where it says beautiful changes with God, yourself, and your parents. And I was like, well, what about my girlfriend? What, isn't this program going to help me make beautiful changes in my relationship? But it didn't say that. And then I started to read the traits, and I realized I was living trait 12, where I was willing to do anything to not experience abandonment feelings. Because as Annie S. taught me, that feeling that I will die without a relationship, that I will die without a partner, that's an abandoned infant. It's pre-verbal and it's infancy, and abandoned infants do die. And that infant was still living inside of me. And sorry, my cat is activating here. That infant was living inside of me, and I was doing everything possible to bring mommy back, and mommy wasn't coming back. After a few days in ACA, I started to wake up. And all those 28 prior years of recovery were not for nothing. I had worked really hard in recovery and in therapy, and ACA just sort of uncorked a lot of like understandings that I didn't have, because I never understood in 28 years of recovery, why was I still creating disastrous relationships? I had no idea why. But I was starting to see why, and I was starting to see that I needed not only to not stay in this relationship, not save this relationship, I needed to leave this relationship immediately. And so that's what I did. I've got about 5 minutes left. I didn't talk about ACA as much as I wanted to, but I'm just letting whatever comes out, comes out. And here comes Mercedes. Ah. I, in a kind way, asked that person to move out of my house. And I also remove myself from my chosen family, which I have lived in this town for over 45 years. And I moved here as a teenager into a very big lesbian community of people a lot older than me. And I basically recreated my family of origin. And I looked around at my life and realized there was not a functional relationship in my life. So I withdrew into my home with my collection of traumatized kids that lives inside of me. Becoming my own loving parent it made so much sense to me. It was kind of like, of course, when it just all clicked so fast for me. And I know that's not true for everybody, but I was really blessed with being like, finally, I know what I need to do. I need to not hand off. I've like got an infant. I've got a screaming 18-month-old that I'm trying to like hand off to women to mother in the guise of a big tough dyke biker dude that's going to like fix your car and take care of you. That was my disguise for an 18-month-old screaming with their arms out, pick me up, comfort me. So I picked up that kid. I picked up the infant. I went to meetings around the clock. That meeting list on adultchildren.org was my lifeline. I was in blood boiling, excruciating pain for about a year, about the first year. And the meetings kept me sane, kept me going. And I paced the floor. I didn't see any humans other than ACA people or, the cashier at Whole Foods or whatever. I just proceeded to reparent a whole bunch of inner kids and finally spend time with the most important person in my life, which is this person. So going on 3 years, and with a minute and a half left, I'll just say that I am no longer afraid of my own feelings. They still come up, but my first responder is myself. I have a beautiful community of fellow travelers that I connect with regularly. It's shifted over the years because my picker was still pretty broken when I first got in here. I also have withdrawn almost entirely from service because one of the ways I hid in plain sight was doing tons of service. I've begun to withdraw gently from all my service positions so that I can double down. Like my recovery is just starting. It took the first like year to grieve 14 relationships that I had not grieved. I've just started to look at my childhood. My ACA recovery is just beginning, but the most important person in my life now is myself. I spend most of my time alone. I never thought I would be able to do that or capable of doing that. It's not a pain-free life, and I don't expect it to be. But I'm no longer harming myself or anybody else. I finally am taking care of myself, learning who I am and what I'm about. And I know it's going to take a long time. It's sort of like part of ACA recovery was really fast, and I got right here where I'm so glad to be. And then there's the slow part that I've been living a certain way for over 60 years. And it's really going to take a while to find out who I actually am and have my real life for however many breaths I've left in my body. And it's all about this program. My life is all ACA now, and connecting with myself and with you guys. Thanks again for listening. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks.